It is time for the annual Why Don't People Play Fighting Games discourse. This comes up about once a year. This time it's come up because of the underperformance of 2XKO, at least through the lens of Riot Games, as they've let off about half of their team. And it also comes in the wake of the overperformance of Deadlock. Deadlock really surging with this most recent update. I feel like I'm in a pretty unique position to be able to talk about this as somebody who started as a fighting game channel and have now transitioned fully over to Deadlock. I also have a communications degree. I worked in marketing and advertising for about 7 years. So it was sort of my day-to-day job to get people onboarded and get new people into things. And yeah, I think I'm uniquely positioned to talk about this. In the background, you'll see some footage of my dog, Terrible Armor King. I've been back on Tekken 8 playing a little bit in anticipation of Season 3. I am excited to see what changes they end up making to this game, so that'll be fun. So just to set the stage, Deadlock, which is currently in a quote-unquote closed alpha, it's really like the easiest alpha to get into, and it's very public, so take that with a grain of salt, but it is averaging about 100,000 players a day. And looking at fgcharts.info, if we look at what I would consider like mainline fighting games, like I'm not counting Brawlhalla, I'm not counting For Honor, between like Street Fighter, Tekken, Mortal Kombat, Guilty Gear, Grand Blue, all of these different franchises, Dragon Ball FighterZ, we're probably getting somewhere in the ballpark of like 40,000, maybe 50,000 players across all fighting games on Steam. Worth noting, of course, we use Steam data as like a proxy, but it is worth noting that like Deadlock is a PC-only game. You can only access it through Steam, so 100,000 players is the totality of all people that play that game, whereas with fighting games, a lot of them, you know, is going to be on like PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and we don't have access to that data. So it's probably the case that like overall, if we were to add up fighting games and all fighting game players as a total, they're probably a little bit more comparable than we are giving it credit for. But it is true that there is no single fighting game that is able to stand up to and like bring in the same player numbers as Deadlock. But then if we're going to be fair and we're going to use that same logic, we're counting all fighting games as a genre. You know, if we add in like Dota 2 and League of Legends, and I guess Heroes of New Earth is back and Heroes of the Storm still exists, and then all of the like MOBA games. I mean, MOBAs are just absolutely blowing these out of the water. And shooting games also would absolutely dominate these, right? So it is also true that, you know, fighting games are just less popular than these other genres. I think at the moment I've always had this position, but I think it's getting more and more obvious that this is not a situation where like simplifying the games of our genre is going to produce this kind of exponential growth that we have been hoping for. I think it's been genuinely like 15 years now of developers deciding that like, oh, if we just like add simple inputs, if we just like reduce the number of like special inputs that you have to do, if we streamline the character interactions, if we take away like strings from the characters so there are less options to have to choose from, if we make the walls break so that nobody has to eat like Oki in the corner, if we make it so that air dashes are slower so that they're easier to react to, if we make anti-airs more consistent, you know, if you do all of these things to like streamline all of these interactions with all of these different players, yes, like there does seem to be some kind of growth, but I struggle to believe that the growth from like Tekken 7 to Tekken 8, or from Street Fighter 5 to Street Fighter 6, or from Guilty Gear Xrd to Guilty Gear Strive are because of these things, especially insofar as these like gameplay design decisions have largely come at the same time as the mandatory inclusion of rollback. So like, it's hard to like look at an example like Guilty Gear Xrd and Guilty Gear Strive and say, oh, all of these new players are coming in because Strive is so much simpler to get into than Guilty Gear Xrd is, when like Guilty Gear Xrd for 90% of its, or I guess basically up past like Strive's release, did not have rollback. It just was not a good experience to play online. It was very difficult to enjoy the game, you know, sitting in your home. I think that the inclusion of rollback plays a major factor in why there are more people willing to play these games day over day now. As somebody who has worked in advertising and marketing for a while, I'm kind of going to shoot myself in the foot here and say that like advertising and marketing cannot overcome the shortcomings of your product. There's like no level of like creative development or optimization of the campaign or anything that is going to, or like sheer impression numbers that is going to be able to overcome a user's first experience with your product, right? So I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Fatal Fury Mark of the Wolves was coming out, they had huge marketing campaigns. I remember, I'm a wrestling fan, so I was watching WrestleMania. And at WrestleMania, Fatal Fury, boom, smack dab in the middle of the ring. They had a whole like promotion. I think a lot of the like intro cards were like Fatal Fury themed, and they had like a thing where the DJ character, I can't even remember what his name is, Salvatore, I think, something like that, like came out and did a little jig or whatever. That had to have cost a fuck ton of money. And as I'm looking at the numbers right now, the average player base of Fatal Fury right now is 187 players purely on Steam. And again, purely on Steam, it has less players than Injustice, BlazBlue Central Fiction, Dead or Alive 6, and JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle R. So I think it's fair to chalk Fatal Fury up, at least in terms of like a day-over-day player numbers, as failure. I think it's a fun game, but I think commercially it's been a failure. One of the major points that people have been bringing up as I'm watching content on this topic is that there is just not enough content in fighting games. Like, people are arguing that like there's not, you know, a story mode, or, you know, there's not enough like customization of characters, or there's not enough, you know, like just alternate game modes and alternate ways of interacting with the game that are outside of just, you know, grinding, playing online, training mode, doing challenges, that kind of thing, to be sort of an on-ramp for the new players. And I do think that those things can help, but I think fundamentally there is like a greater, I don't want to say issue with the genre, but it's like there's like something fundamental about the genre that makes it very, very difficult to onboard new people for. And I think I can kind of describe what that is. So if I look at like the really popular genres, like probably the most popular genre that has had incredible staying power over the past like few decades has been the shooting genre. Third-person shooters, first-person shooters, you know, arcade shooters, sim shooters, yeah, all kinds of things, right? Just the shooting genre in all different types and flavors of it, tac shooters, have had incredible staying power, and they're all very, very popular. And one thing that I have always argued is that when I look at shooting games as like an onboarding experience, the controls and the way that you maneuver your character through the game is much more, not intuitive is not the right word, because there's nothing intuitive about like the character on screen holds a gun and I have to like hold this controller in my hand to like make them move the gun. Like if I gave a controller to like my grandmother, she wouldn't know how to maneuver the controller to make the character on the screen do what she wants it to do, right? So it's not intuition, but there is, I guess, a clarity to the control system, is I guess the way that I'll put it. I'm thinking about Call of Duty. Every button has its place, right? So there's a stick that makes me move around, and then there's a stick that makes me move the reticle. There's a trigger that makes me aim down sight, and then there's a trigger that makes me fire the weapon. There's a button that makes me throw my tactical grenade, and then there's a button that makes me throw my lethal grenade. There's the jump button, there is a button that makes me crouch, there's a reload button, there's a button that makes me switch from one weapon to another. Each button is very distinct in its function and what it does, right? And so if you are able to apply some level of real world logic, and you're like, okay, this is a shooting game, I probably need to move my character through the space, I need to point my reticle at an enemy, I need to aim down my sight to increase my accuracy, and then I need to pull the other trigger to fire my weapon. And you can like kind of logically figure out what you are meant to be doing to accomplish the goals of the game, applying a level of real world logic and by understanding the individual uses of all of the different buttons, right? That's pretty clear. And yes, as I'm describing it, like, we're not describing a Call of Duty player who is like playing exceptionally well. They're not like achieving mastery of the game or anything, but their understanding of the controls and their understanding of like the game rules, like if it's TDM, I need to move through the map, I need to shoot the enemies, can give them enough information to be able to like problem solve kind of on their own. Like if they happen to walk around and they get hit by like a flash grenade, they're like, oh, okay, maybe I need to like look away from that as like an example. Or if like there's a bunch of enemies over there and they like run out and then they get shot, they're like, okay, maybe I ran out there too fast, maybe I should, you know, slow my roll a little bit. They can kind of immediately move to the problem solving phase because every button has a very unique function to it, right? And they're able to apply some level of real world logic. Now when you think about a game like Street Fighter in comparison, there are, if we talk about like an arcade stick or a gamepad, but I'll talk about an arcade stick first. There is a stick that makes you move the character, and then there is a button that makes you do an attack, and then there is a button that makes you do an attack, and then there is a button that makes you do an attack, and then there are 3 more buttons that make you do attacks. And sometimes when you push combinations of buttons, like let's say I pushed heavy punch and heavy kick, I do a different kind of attack that has a weird animation on it. And when I push medium punch and medium kick, I don't do an attack for some reason. Instead, I like do this blue glowy thing. I don't really know what that's doing. And then if I push like left punch and light punch, light kick, my character kind of throws their arms out. Maybe that's a kind of attack. Oh, okay. Like if I move close enough, then they do like a grab. I don't know why I would do that. There's the objective of the game is I need to beat the opponent up before they beat me up. And my vehicle of doing it is moving and then 6 different kinds of attacks. But I can't immediately move to the problem solving thing unless I understand why I would use any of these attacks over any of the other attacks, right? Does this make sense? So in order for the player to be able to move to the part where they can problem solve independently, they have to first be introduced to the internal structure of the game, why you would use a faster attack over a slower attack when the slower attack deals more damage than the faster attack. The idea of like knockdowns and not being able to do things when you're knocked down on the ground, like all of these kinds of things that like we kind of take for granted now. The player can't move to the problem solving part of the game without kind of being instructed in some kind of way. And that's where like the YouTube guides and the challenge modes and the tutorials and all of this stuff comes in. And so the player immediately hits this roadblock where they're like, okay, I can't, you know, go online and play matches and then just learn through osmosis like I can most other games or a lot of the games that they might be coming from like other genres. I have to first like study and learn. And that is immediately a big turnoff for anybody who plays video games primarily casually, right? And that is a very difficult hurdle to get people to overcome because at the end of the day, like most people are going to want to play their video games casually. They don't want to like study to be able to understand them, to be able to then problem solve, right? That's just not the way that like 90% of people interact with their games. And so when like the marketing and the messaging of all of these games is like, we've simplified everything. You no longer have to do special inputs. You no longer have to know this, that, and the other. You can just jump on, push one button over and over, and you can do your flashy combos and you can have fun. And that's like the messaging that you're selling people. And that doesn't match the experience when they hop on the game. They hop on the game and they still get their ass beat for reasons that they don't understand. They bounce. Like they can't stick around because you've sold them on a lie. Right, your marketing does not survive the player's first interaction with the game fundamentally. So there was like an article that kind of spawned this initial discussion. It was a very long article. It was well written. In it, the gentleman kind of posits that like, and some people agree with this, some people disagree with this, but for some reason that people might play a fighting game is because they enjoy, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember exactly what the wording is, but effectively it sells you the idea of like a kung fu or like an action movie, right? The idea that like I am in control of this character and I am going to beat up your character using stylish, like interesting characters with their own motives and you know, this, that, and the other, right? And so I think like if you wanted to make marketing that was actually impactful and would convert more people over to the game, you would need to market the game in a way that sells them on the idea that like this is a game about learning and about mastery, in the same way that like learning a martial art is about mastery, right? You don't like walk into like a karate studio or like an MMA class or anything expecting to just beat people up for free, right? The idea is like you go there because you want to learn, you want to improve, you want to get in better shape. And as a part of that, you are going to have more success in the matches that you have in that environment, right? And that's what you sign up for when you enter that kind of space. If you market fighting games in the same kind of way, then you attract the right kind of people, right? And so I think, if I was like in charge of a fighting game, there would be two major things that I wanted. One is I really want the game to be designed and to resonate with its core audience, right? Like recently there was a time period where there were betas for Marvel Telecom and Avatar Legends, the fighting game, like at basically the exact same time, right? And it was really funny to see on Twitter and like on Maximilian Dude's stream and whatnot, people trying the Marvel Telecom fighting game and it just not really clicking with them. And then going over to try Avatar, which is a game with like a much lower budget, like I think at that time fewer characters, and just like having exponentially more fun. Because like Marvel Telecom, at least just from what I've played, they like didn't have a training mode in the beta because for whatever reason they just don't want people to lab during these net play betas, which I just don't understand. Like the Avatar Legends beta, even if you argue like, oh, we're testing the net code, we need you to test the net code, not the game. Like Avatar Legends had like training mode in its beta and people still wanted to use the things that they had learned to go fight other people online. So I kind of consider that a non-starter. B, if people lab and they find things in the game that they find like not enjoyable, or they don't enjoy exploring the game, or they don't like the interactions that they see, that's feedback that you need now. So I think having a training mode in that kind of beta is an important thing. But regardless, the experience that I had of Marvel Telecom is that they really wanted to make each character feel really approachable and like you could build your team like however you wanted to. And granted, to their credit, it does look like they're kind of stepping away from this. But at least at that time, you could kind of build the team however you wanted to, because no matter like what character you had in what slot, it was designed such that like whatever character you put in this slot would do like a very similar type of move. Like the assist might be like a projectile that goes left to right, and then the character in this slot would do like an uppercut type assist, and then the character in this slot would do a third type of assist. So it really homogenized and made it so that you didn't have to consider like, oh, I need this character here because they offer an assist that I can't get anywhere else. It's just like, okay, if you like that character, just put them in this slot and they do the thing. That sort of reduces friction in a way that also reduces creativity. It doesn't enhance it. Similarly, they made it such that there's only like one health bar in the game. And there is not, at least as far as I could tell, there was not an incredible reason to switch between multiple different characters in that beta. Even though it was a team game, you kind of could switch between characters if you wanted to, or you could just stick to the one single character, and that was like kind of a stated design goal that they had for the game. And again, I think that reduces friction in a way that reduces creativity overall. And so the culmination of all of these things is that no matter what character you were playing or how you composed your team or what have you, every character's like routes and stuff felt very samey. Every team composition felt very samey, and it just wasn't as fun to explore that game. Granted, there are a lot of factors influencing this. Like maybe if we had training mode, we would have found a lot more things. We would have been doing more diverse combos and stuff like that. But again, this is just players' very first perception of this. And so Max goes and he tries the Avatar Legends fighting game. And in that beta has a tremendous amount of fun because the characters are incredibly deep and incredibly diverse. They have like I think Zuko has like 3 different unique character mechanics that are exclusive to him. He has 3 variations. He has like so many special moves. He's got down inputs and forward inputs, and I think he's got DP inputs, and he's got dive kicks, and he's got special dive kicks, and he's got just all kinds of things to explore. And that's just one character. Every character had a tremendous amount of depth to them to be explored and to play with. And that just led to an incredible enjoyment of playing that game and exploring the game and playing the game online. And I think you need the core audience to enjoy playing the game online because of the way that things are like really marketed now. Like, again, shooting myself in the foot, but I really don't think that people engage with products because they see paid advertising online for it anymore. Like, obviously some percentage will, otherwise there would be no industry for me to work in at all. But I think ultimately the reason why people engage with things, and particularly in this space, engage with products, is because they heard from someone that they trust that it was good. Sometimes that person is a friend, Or increasingly now, that person might be like a content creator online because, you know, you've developed these sort of parasocial relationships with people. You've listened to their content enough. You've come to respect their opinion. And then when they say something, you kind of take it to heart because it's an individual with a real opinion that was not paid for, you know, quote unquote. Sometimes it's paid for, but you probably don't respect that opinion when it's paid for. You respect it when it's genuine and it's authentic and it's coming from somebody who you sort of identify with and sort of sees things through a lens that you do. So I think the number one most important thing is ensuring that as many fighting game players as possible enjoy playing your fighting game. So that if you are from the outside looking in, what you see is not a bunch of people sort of like all of the content creators that are in this space sort of coming in and then bouncing off of it in a couple of weeks because there's just nothing to really explore. What you see is like everybody from like the Guilty Gear community and the Street Fighter community and the Tekken community and the Mortal Kombat community, a bunch of people from all different kinds of spaces coming into this same game and being like, wow, this is really fun. This is really engaging. And then you're like, maybe there's something to this game. Maybe I understand this genre is about, you know, I'm going to have to invest some time. I'm going to have to work at it. But it seems to be worth it because everybody from different spaces really enjoys this game, right? That's increasingly what I think is really important. But that's kind of my position. I think you have to make games that are fun as hell to play for the core audience that is already engaged with your genre. I think you have to have marketing that is honest with the prospective players that says, hey, look, you know, this is you know, tough in some way. This is going to, you know, take some level of mastery, but it's worth it. It's fun. It's an experience like you can't have in any other genre, which is true. But, and maybe this will come across in like a pessimistic way, I don't mean it, but I think we have to let go of the notion that we can have this kind of exponential explosion of growth kind of period. Like we have to understand that like at the end of the day, not the percentage of people who have not tried fighting games, who are going to be interested in a genre that is primarily about playing other people online, that is a little cumbersome to get into because you need some kind of like lesson or some kind of understanding about it to be able to go in. And it is ultimately kind of a solitary experience where it's just you as an individual against them as an individual. And it's not like a team sport where you get to be like super social with everybody. Like that's not going to appeal to everybody, and that's okay. There are things that you can do to like mitigate this a little bit. Like everybody's kind of trying this like virtual online arcade space that you hang out in, but like really I have never seen that idea play out in a way that like creates like that like reduces that feeling of solitude in a way. Like ultimately the game is a 1v1 game like 90% of the time. I guess 2Co can be a 2v2 game, but most of the time it's a 1v1 game. And then like when you back out to the lobby and you read the chat, it's like, wow, nice way running around, bitch. Like just people flaming each other and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. I think there's like some things you could do. Like it would be cool if a fighting game had like, let's say like 3 factions, right? You boot up Street Fighter 6 and it's like, you know, which faction do you want to join? And you like join one of these 3. And that creates some amount of like solidarity with the other people that are in your faction. As you're grinding, you bump into them and you're like, hey, what's up, brother? But also some like, oh, this guy's from the Kai clan, I'm gonna fuck this guy up, right? Some like in-group, out-group kind of thing to create that sense of community, right? Like that would be cool. That would be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I think with fighting games and like the way that they've been designed over the past like 30 years, you have to create a fun ass game with a level of transparency about what the person is going to be getting into and convince people that it's worth it to get into it. Because I think like the alternative of like designing a product that appeals to as many people as possible and gets like 100,000 people in and playing it every single day would require a fundamental change to the formula of a fighting game that would be so drastic that it would no longer appeal to the core audience at all anymore. Like it wouldn't even be a fighting game. So like what would be the point? Like, did we really accomplish our mission at that point? Did we get people into fighting games if we made I don't even know what that would be. I can't imagine it. So I don't know. That's kind of my position. That's what I think. I'd be curious to hear all of your thoughts. Let me know down in the comment section below, and also ignore all the things that I just said and flame the Armor King gameplay in the background. Let me know that I can block that. Cool. I appreciate you. Have a good one, everyone. Peace out.